some questions today too. So please participate. Yeah, and then my colleague Erica is here from Leland. She's awesome, and she can answer your question, Lena, about the recordings. And while we're waiting to give folks a chance to settle in, fill out this form and win some cool free stuff. You'll also see some links in the chat to the giveaway too, and a chance to sign up for a free Leland account, which is great. There's a lot of awesome folks on Leland. I do GRE, but I have had students and I have former colleagues who coach on Leland, and then I've had a bunch of students who've worked with GMAT and admissions and all different types of coaches through Leland, and love being here and always heard super positive things. So sign up for your free Leland account. Cool. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Maybe everyone, just because I want us to be able to use the chat to communicate, say hi in the chat and maybe tell us where you're at. We've got Honolulu, we've got Greece. What other places in the United States, in the world do we have here? Mumbai, amazing. It must be really early in the morning for you. Oh, Rashab. So thank you for being here. Azalea, I'm in NYC too. Singapore. Oh my gosh, we have a few early morning folks. Seattle. Oh, Seattle's great. Sweden, nice. Bogota. Oh, this is cool. I still, after all, I've been teaching on Zoom since 2018, and I'm like still delighted by the fact that I get to work with people from all over the world in my teaching, because I can do it online. So this is super fun. Dallas, nice. My mom's family's from Texas. I've got a lot of Texas family. North Carolina. I'm thinking about moving to North Carolina. Cool. We're going to talk about timing today. So I'm hoping in today's session, I'm guessing maybe if you want to let me know in the chat, where are you in your GRE preparation process? I'm hoping that I have things to offer, everyone, whether you're brand new or you're taking the GRE in a few days. So as we go through, I'll try to kind of point out what's most applicable to different stages in this process. So after saying hi in the chat and letting us know where you are, if you'd like, please also let me know what stage of your GRE prep are you currently in, and that'll be helpful. Yay, awesome. I love when I get to catch people right at the start of their process, because I always hope I can give you, one or two nuggets that'll make the overall process less stressful and more efficient for you. My goal as a coach and a teacher is always to get people done with this test as soon as possible so they can move on to other more fun stuff. Simran, nice. That is a great book to have. 5 Fun Book for Manhattan Prep. I have worked for MPrep for many years, done a lot of different things for them. These days I'm doing still a small amount of teaching there. But I think they make good materials, and that's a great resource to have. Awesome. Ooh, Donald, good switch. Yeah. And Lena, yeah, there's a lot of crossover. And I think some of the nuances of timing strategy are going to be different, but some of the core things I can tell you about how to prepare for timing and how to practice timing absolutely apply to GMAT. And then if you ever get sick of GMAT, come to GRE. It's much better. I like the GRE better, but it's a personal choice. I think some people connect better with one or the other. And if anyone is has questions about that switch, let me know. Yeah, iPhone user. I'm so glad you're going to retake it. Many people have that experience where they go to take it and, being in that official test situation, things get a little more stressful. Maybe timing falls apart a bit. So absolutely glad you're going to come back. I see many people take this test more than once, sometimes several times. And if they're not where they want to be on their first take, they get there by by their second, by their third. Sometimes it takes a few. So always glad to see someone is going to come back and try again, because I think in my experience that tends to work well. Cool. Yeah, new GRE, so much better than old GMAT. Love it. Cool, Tariq. Awesome. This is me. Like I said, I've been teaching the GRE I started with Manhattan Prep in 2015. So I've been doing this for 9 years. I've talked about GRE problems and thought about GRE problems on a near daily basis for 9 years, which I find kind of funny. It is not the career I expected to have. I started teaching GRE to support myself while I was doing an MFA in fiction writing. And I found that I was really lucky. I love teaching. I love the people I get to work with in my GRE coaching. And so I've just kept doing it. What do I love about it? I love helping people to create change in their lives. And so I love getting to work with people as they're going into this process of thinking about grad school, going further in a career, switching careers, whatever it is. I think it's really cool to get to be a part of that moment in my clients' lives where they're working to create a positive change for themselves. And I really like trying to make this process a little bit less stressful, a little bit more fun, because these tests and the larger process of applying to school, even though the end goal is awesome and great and worthwhile, the process itself is really hard and can be incredibly stressful. So I always want to think about how I can make everyone's lives easier in that way. Cool. All right. So if you're just coming in, welcome. My name is Kat. We are going to talk about timing today. I'm going to try to give you some good tips about time, how to practice it, how to get faster. Sometimes it's not about getting faster, it's about changing our strategy, but we'll see that in action today. And I want to answer all of your questions. So as I go, if you have questions about things I'm currently talking about, throw them in the chat. And then I'm going to try to end with like 10, 15 minutes at the end of the session to answer any questions that you have. Can be about timing, can also just be about the GRE as a whole. But I'm going to start with your question, Simran, so I don't forget. Simran asked, how long should we prep for before taking the first exam? Do I recommend 3 months at minimum? I would say 3 months is a good bare minimum. I think when I started in this industry, there was a common narrative that 3 months was sort of the average time to prepare. But in my experience over the last 9 years, I have not necessarily seen that to be true. I think the average time for my experience is a bit longer, maybe more in the 4 to 8 month range. And I say that not to discourage or panic anyone. If you're starting now and you're aiming for like round one deadlines, right? I think you still have time. I've seen people prep faster, but I like to try to set the expectation that this can take a little time, just so that everyone's prepared for it. Cool. So ask questions as we go, and then if you have broader questions, we'll save some time at the end for them. Today, I want to start today by doing something that scares me. I want to do a live demonstration of me doing a timed set of problems. I was joking with Erica just before the call. I've been doing this for many years, and I have been telling people the same things about time over and over again. And it was just last year, in like year 8 of my career, that I was like, I think it would be better if I demonstrated this. So I'm going to do a timed set of problems that I have probably never seen before, live for you, narrating, showing you kind of my written work, narrating my thought process, so that you can just see how I work with time on the test. And usually, well, we'll get there. I'll give you some framing. So we're going to start with that. Then I'm going to go through some kind of core do's and don'ts for timing in general. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to practice time, thinking about both quant and verbal. I think I'm going to demo a quant set today, but a lot of what I'm saying can apply to both quant and verbal. And then I'll save some time for questions at the end. Cool. But I actually want to start with asking you guys 2 questions. And I'll keep these in mind and try to address them as I go through the kind of mini class today. What if you know, right? And I know some folks are totally new, and you may just say, I'm just totally new. But if you've done some of this, or you've done a practice test, you've done an official test, where is time specifically giving you trouble? What are the main challenges that you face? And is it kind of one section or both sections? Where within the test are you struggling with time? So let me know in the chat, and then I will just try to, reading comp, cool. We're going to talk specifically about practicing time and reading comp kind of toward the end of the session. Awesome. Yeah, keep letting me know, because then I can build in some of your specific issues to my conversation. So answer in the chat. What timing challenges do you face? Yeah, we're getting some love for reading comp. Good. The answer is not necessarily reading faster. We're going to talk about that. I think that's a common mistake that people try to just read faster, and that usually tends to make things worse. Yes, yeah, knowing when to move on from a problem, Rhiannon, that is an essential skill. It's a skill that's going to be a major focus of your timing practice, and we're going to talk a lot about it because I think it's really important. Love it. Yeah, Miriam, same question. Awesome. Yes, and Mary, it's not necessarily about getting faster, right? It might be about choosing to allocate time differently, choosing to do less in some ways. So there's, I think, going to be good news in that. Um, cool. Yeah, I am not going to talk about data insights because it's GMAT, unfortunately. So the GMAT territory, I'm not going to get into, but hopefully some of the time stuff will still be helpful. Cool. All right. This is great. If you have other things you want to share, please do. And then I'm going to start introducing this demo that I'm going to do. So I am going to now take us into a live demonstration of me doing a timed set. Ooh, Simran, great question. If you can remind me of it at the end when we have some open Q&A, and I can speak a bit to that. So if you just hold it and we'll come back at the end. Appreciate it. I'm gonna share my desktop so you can see the problems that I'm doing, my written work, my scratch paper, and I'm gonna try to narrate my thought process out loud. It might get a little chaotic. Sometimes it does because I'm trying to do a lot of things at once, but that's good because one of the things that I want to demonstrate is how I'm nervous about this, right? I haven't done this in front of such a big group ever. So I'm nervous. So that's also something I want to show you, right? Is how do I work with nerves too? Because it's often, our internal states, test anxiety, nervousness, freezing, things like that can really be a big part of timing issues. Don't try to do these problems, right? Because if you're trying to do the problems, you're going to miss sort of the demo part of it. And that's not what I'm most interested in here. What I would love for you all to be thinking about and watching for, and maybe even make a couple notes about it, because I'm going to ask you for what you notice at the end, is what do I do in my approach that's different from what you do? And of those things that I do that are different, are there any that you think might help you? My hope is that everyone can maybe find one or two specific habits, behaviors, techniques, thought patterns that I use that help me be successful, that you can take and borrow from me and that can help you be successful too. Now, part of why, something to always keep in mind, right? I have been doing GRE for 9 years. I do it every day. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. But I'm not amazing at math. That's why I wanted to show you quant, because it's the section that is my weakness. And I have had to work a lot over the years to be really strong in quant. And I still get nervous, and there's still some quant problems that I can't do. Even after all this time, right? There's still some problems that I can't do. So I'm hoping also to show you, even in the section that you may feel is your weaker section, is it quant, is it verbal? I've always hated math, I've always hated reading. You can still, by sort of working and practicing to find the right strategy and the right way of working with yourself, you can absolutely still see success in that section, and you can still manage time effectively on that section. We just have to maybe work with our weaker section a little bit differently. All right, so I'm gonna just get this set up for us. All right, I'm gonna use, I will show you now. Oh, that's not how I'm gonna do it. I need to share the whole desktop. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to use this tool, which I use a lot in my work. It is it's made by Kaplan. It's called the Kaplan Q Bank. I am not, Kaplan does not give this to me, or I'm not sponsored by Kaplan. I just really like this particular tool, and I found it really great for time set work. So when you get to a place in your preparation, and I don't think you should begin with timing, right? Timing's a like second or third stage thing. But when you start to get really interested in timing, this tool can be a really great investment. And I pay for it myself because I find it incredibly useful in my teaching. So I'm gonna do a set that's all difficulty, mix of easy, medium, and hard questions. That's similar to what you'd see in like the first, there's 2 quant sections, right? What you'd see in the first quant section. I'm going to do problem solving, which is like the normal, often multiple choice, sometimes text entry type of math problem. And I'm going to do, 5. Maybe I'm going to do just 3 questions because I want to make sure we have plenty of time. Cat demos, that 1. And and then if, we'll just see, but I was originally gonna do 5. I think I'm gonna do 3, keep it a little short. And then my goal in the set is to not totally freak out at doing this in front of people. But my goal is also to get 2 out of these 3 correct, right? So if I can get all 3, that's like a nice flex as a test prep professional. But my real goal, and if I were, back in the day when I was studying, my goal would have been to get 2 out of 3 or 4 out of 5. I'm never aiming for 100%, right? I'm always aiming for 60 to 80%. And we're going to talk about why. But first, so here you can see my scratch work. Here we'll be able to see the problems. Like I said, don't do the problems, just observe and notice what techniques do I use. How do I think, anything I do that's a little different from what you do that you think might be helpful. And then we'll see what we learn. All right. Oh, I'm nervous. Okay. All right. Question 1. I have 6 minutes. A soda bottling machine can bottle 4,500 liters per minute. How many liters can it bottle in seconds? All right. I don't like unit conversion. I can do it, but it makes me nervous. So I'm going to just go to the second question so that I can start with something that doesn't make me nervous. Okay. What is the value of X? Oh, good. I love exponent problems. I think exponent problems are great. So I am going to do this one first instead, and I'm going to use it to kind of settle myself down. And I have 5 minutes and 20 seconds. Okay, so I see a 9 and I see 3s and 3s. So I'm going to convert everything to base 3. That's a common technique for exponent problems to match them. And everything I'm writing down, right, is like what I would write down on the test. And I'm just using my knowledge of exponent rules to do this division. So this becomes 3 to the x times 3 to the 6x. This becomes 3 to the 10x, 3 to the 84. And then this becomes 3 to the 7x equals 3 to the 10x, 3 to the 84. And then I was just looking at the answers to check that there's negatives because I was starting to feel there would be negatives, and there are. So I'm going to divide both sides by this. And this cancels, and it becomes 1 over 3 to the 3x equals 3 to the 84. And then just move over so you can still see. And so then I have 3 to the negative 3x equals 3 to the 84. So negative 3x equals 84. And now I have my calculator and I'm nervous. So here I'm not going to do this in my head. Divided by negative 3. And I get x equals negative 28. And thank goodness that is answer choice A. Cool. All right, next. Good. So I'm feeling good about my goal of 2 out of 3 because now I only have 3 minutes and 20 seconds left, which is not quite enough time to do 2, but is enough time to do 1. A box contains 5 right-handed gloves and 6 left-handed gloves. What is the smallest number of gloves that must be removed from the box in order to be certain at least one right-handed glove has been removed? Okay, cool. This is a reasoning question, and so I'm just not going to rush. I think I want to jump to an answer. I'm just going to be a little patient. I'm also still feeling nervous. I'm just going to take a breath, calm down. Okay, this in order to be certain, at least one right-handed glove has been removed. I feel like it has to be 7, right? Like we remove all 6 left-handed gloves and then like worst case scenario, right? Like it's just all left-handed gloves and then a right-handed glove. So it could be sooner, but you know, if I said 6, then it would be, I could still pick all left-handed gloves. So I think I'm going to just go with 7. I'm a little distrustful. That felt sort of too easy to me, but I'm going to go back. I don't think staring at that one more is going to help. So let me go back and see if I can get this one because I'm not confident about that third one. All right, 4,500 liters per minute, and I need S seconds. So I have 4,500 liters per minute. And then I have times in 1 minute, there's 60 seconds times S seconds. And so then these are going to cancel out. And I'm going to get 4,500 divided by 60, 75 S. And that's weirdly the answer he chose. Cool. Okay, so that also makes, I think that's good. I'm glad I saved this for last. It didn't seem to be that bad in the end. So let me just go back through seconds, liters per minute, liters per second. Yeah, I'm just checking the units. So, you know, seconds, so then the seconds come out and I get just liters left. Awesome. I have a good, you know, I don't like these, they stress me out, but I have a system for them and that helps. All right. I feel pretty good about this one. I tend to make small errors, so I'm just going to take a second to make sure. All right, and then I think I'm good. I'm gonna wrap it up. Whew, all right. Like I said, this always makes me super nervous, but that went good in the end, and I got a little lucky, right? Like that middle one was hard, but it played to my strengths. The last one was easy, and that helped me out, and then I was able to go back into the first one. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. So now I want to ask you, this is your moment to run. Let's return to our questions. And I'm curious, what did you notice in how I did this that is different from how you work and that might be helpful to you in your studies? So in the chat, maybe share one thing that you noticed. It can be about how I talk to myself. You know, obviously I'm not talking to myself out loud on the test, but I would be having this conversation in my own head with myself. How do I use my paper? How do I move through problems? What did I do that is different from what you currently do that might be helpful? What did you notice about how I worked with this? So everyone maybe try to share one thing in the chat. And I'm super curious. Yep. Yeah. Yes. If the first question is not a strength for me, I don't start with it. And that's because I don't want to act, you know, I'm anxious when I start, right? So I don't want to bring up my anxiety. I want to bring it down. But I also am always telling myself what type it is. I think the IDing is important. Not doing an order, right? I'm flexible. That's really, really helpful to me. Yeah, exactly. And Benjamin, there's certain topics where I'm less comfortable. I do them in sometimes a more labor intensive way for that exact reason, just to be precise. So if it's an area where I know I make small errors, I know myself as a test taker super well, I absolutely will over notate just so, and it also helps me stay calm too. It helps me be steady. Yes, I get unlimited flags. And then on the test itself, you can also pull up a screen that says review. So you can see and then navigate back to the ones that you've flagged. It's not available in this Kaplan tool, but it is in the official test. Yeah, and that, Rhiannon, it's so interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that you're an engineering major because I guarantee that you're better at math than me, right? Like engineering involves a level of math that I would not do. But in a way that sometimes I think helps me because I'm very willing to learn like GRE math. And so I think for anyone who has a strong quantitative background, it's sometimes you may find that you naturally want to pursue solution paths that are maybe even harder than they need to be. I see that a lot with, I had a friend who was um, a theoretical physicist who was doing GRE problems, like doing trigonometry by hand on the GRE. And I was like, you can just use a trick and do it in 30 seconds. So things like that can be helpful if you're strong in math. Yeah, and also, right, like I'm confident because I've done this for a long time, but I also am confident because I know where I'm weak, right? And I'm okay with that. So for me, confidence isn't about being like, oh, I'm great at everything. It's about knowing myself and then about accepting my strengths and weaknesses and not making meaning out of them. Like, ooh, I don't know if I can get this question right. Well, that's okay, because I don't have anything to prove to this one question. Yeah, I make a lot of silly mistakes, so I got to check. I got to be really careful with that. That's my biggest issue. No, GRE scratch paper in a test center is white unlined paper, like what I did this demonstration with. So they'll give it to you in a little booklet. Awesome. Yes, Elliot, I write out everything. I promise you, if you see me or someone else who takes this test, who's a test prep professional, we're going to write out more than like anyone else in that test center. Great. Zoe, that is a great question, and I'll kind of return to it, but it's not a simple answer, it's a nuanced answer. So I'll speak to it as we go through. Cool. I love it. I think a lot of what you guys have raised here in the chat is it, right? Like in a way, we've already have, I think, a good best practices list just from this really nice noticing. And for Varun, that is also a question that is nuanced and actually is one of the big goals of studying is to answer that question for yourself. So I'm going to speak to that. For me, I check in at 1 minute, and if I think I can do it in another minute, I keep going. And then I check in at 2 minutes. And if I'm not close at 2 minutes, or if I get to an answer that's not one of the answer choices, after a minute and 30 seconds. So between a minute and 30 seconds and 2 minutes is where I'll cut my losses if it's not going well. But I do also make some decisions in the first like 15 to 30 seconds about doing it. All right, so I'm going to go into just kind of formalizing some of the things that have already arisen in this conversation, some core things to keep in mind with timing. Number one, this is the most important thing. Don't try to do every problem. Yeah, I'm gonna go iPhone user. It's very similar to Varun's question, and I'll return to it. I haven't forgotten it, but it'll make more sense to talk about in a minute. Don't try to do every problem. It is the biggest way that people can boost their score quickly. And so, 9 times out of 10, when someone comes and says, I ran out of time, I had big timing problems, I didn't get the score I want, the first and most important intervention is do less. And the idea is this, instead of spreading yourself too thin, right? Strategically guess and bail quickly, always fill in a guess on 1 to 4 questions, depends on the person and on the section. In each section, use that time to be more accurate. I still have some channeling from that time since I type something full of typos. Use that time to be more accurate elsewhere. So for me, right in that set, I was like, I'm going to definitely get 2 of these, and I will only attempt the third if I'm very confident I've locked down 2. And then because I was a little doubtful on that third question, I came back. I want to talk about this idea of a low value problem. So of course, when I'm like, skip some, valence, the natural question is, well, which ones? How do I know? And there's a few different criteria that I use to make this decision. If I look at it and I think this is going to take me more than 2 minutes to answer this question accurately, I just know it will, because it's the thing I'm slow at, or, if the only solution path I see is like, I could test a dozen numbers, right? I just know it's going to take time. Guess, mark, move on. This might be something that you come back to, right? So if it's in this camp of like, could do but slow, you might consider returning. If it's something where it's like, this is a top, this is a level of difficulty for this topic that I don't do well, then I will often just guess and never return. So there's, as I'm thinking about problems that I'm not going to do, there's some that are never, never do, just pretend it's not there. And then there might be some where it's like, if time, but not at this moment. And this is also super important. When we think about managing time, it's also really important to think about managing energy and managing attention. Because and managing level of nerves, because these are all finite resources too. Sometimes I think we get so focused on time, trying to make everything fast, that we maybe burn out some of our energy. Fatigue can be a huge problem in second quant, second verbal sections in particular. And so when I think about practicing timing, I'm always thinking about overall efficiency. So I'm noting my internal reactions and how my internal stress levels are impacted by problems. So these are some factors that might make me say I'm not going to do this type of problem. How do you know what are your low value problems, right? You want to ideally go into your official test with kind of a mental map of things they should do, shouldn't do, should be wary of. And this comes through time set practice. And I'm going to talk about how to do time set practice a little bit later today. However, one of the big things, and if you're new, right, great opportunity to start off on a good foot here. One of the biggest issues that I see in timing is that people rush into wanting to be doing the math, doing the algebra, doing the arithmetic, right? And what happens is they maybe make a small error and have to leap back, or they pursue what ends up being a really inefficient solution path. And so a great habit to establish at the start, you can even set a timer for 15 to 30 seconds as you practice, is take a little bit of time up front to think about what type of problem is this, what topic is this, just IDing the problem, and then where am I going to start? Do I know what it wants from me? And if you don't know where to start, you don't know what it wants from you, that's great, right? That's a great moment to say, cool, this isn't a problem I should do today. Or if you do know where to start, but you foresee it's going to be long or stressful, or not have a good chance of being successful in this moment, then you might also choose to guess and move on. Always guess, always fill in a guess. Don't lose points for wrong answers. No, skipping problems does not reduce your score. However, getting a question wrong and leaving it blank are the same. They're sort of like a 0. So always guess, because you might get a bonus from guessing, and you won't lose anything if you guess wrong. A little bit, Elliot, if you start to place into the harder second section, you may find that you need to let a couple more go. Once you start dealing with a higher, and this is around maybe the 160 mark, but not necessarily. So if you start to notice, there's a lot of hard questions in the second section, then you might be more inclined to skip more. I also think that fatigue plays a bigger role in the second quant and second verbal sections, because they're a little bit longer. We go from 12 to 15. And my experience when I took the new test last fall was that even though the test was so much shorter, there's something existentially difficult to me about going from a short section to a longer section. So those are two things to keep in mind, how we shift from first to second section. iPhone and Varun. Now I'm going to return to your guys' questions. Sorry, iPhone. I'm going to turn to your question, right? Should you check or should you try the ones you couldn't solve? It depends. If some of the ones that you said I'm not going to do in this moment, you think you could solve, go back and solve them. If you know that they're questions you can't do, right? They're a level of difficulty you're not comfortable with, they're a topic you don't know, they're, a type of question you've never gotten right anytime you've practiced it, right? If they're in that bucket of never, then I would say check. So that the answer to your question is it would depend on the circumstances. And that's the type of decision making that you're going to practice in time set work to prepare for. I love these questions. They are great. Keep them coming, and I'll try to pause from time to time to answer. Next, super important best practice. You notice this in this set, right? If that first question is not a good fit, don't put your head down, don't dig your heels in, move forward. I tell people maybe go to question 4, right? Because the first 3 are all super hard. Difficulty is all mixed within a section, right? So the hardest 3 questions in a section could be the first 3, or they will be super easy. You just don't know. So start with something that's going to allow you to settle, that you look at it and you think, yeah, I can do that. Because then you can use that problem both to lower your level of activation and to settle into a nice pace, right? That's I think, if anyone does like distance running, right? It's like a long race. So at the beginning, you want to have a sense of what your right pace feels like. And then in that first question, you want to just settle yourself into that nice pace. Then you can go back and do the things that looked tricky because you'll have a clear head. When I went back to that unit conversion problem, it was smooth and easy for me. But if I tried to do it when I was anxious, it would have taken me more time. So being flexible can also, when we think about timing, it's really this sort of multivariable game of how do I get my mind and my rational mind to like perform at its best. And some of that's managing ourselves in a skillful way. Cool. Number 3, this is another one that's super hard, right? Because if we notice as I was going through that set, I had points where I checked in with time. If I got to one of those benchmarks, one moment I got to one of those benchmarks and I was like, oh, this is, I have under 3 minutes. Under 4 minutes. I have 2 unanswered questions. 2 minutes per question is my benchmark for quant. So I was like, oh, I don't know if I have enough time, but I'm not going to rush in that moment because then I could potentially, if I start rushing, I might get 7 questions wrong in a row. So I I got behind in time, I made 1 error, and I can compound it horribly by rushing. I see this, I've seen this play out to like really disastrous effects sometimes. So instead I say, you know what, I'm going to accept I have 4, if I have 6 problems left, right, in 4 minutes, I'm going to say, cool, I accept that I can do 2 of these last 6 questions, but I'm going to pick the 2 that I can do and I'm going to execute them calmly and comfortably so that I get those 2 points. Because this is not a test where I have to be perfect, but it is a test where I need to make the best of the situation that I'm in at each moment. So I choose to do less to get back on time. I don't start trying to do everything faster. Cool. Bruno, I'll answer that at the end because that's a little involved. But yes, I see your question. All right. I want to now apply this briefly to reading quant because I know that's a specific sort of a specific challenge that folks are working with. And just gonna check in more time. Good. We're in a good place for time. I think it's similar to what I was just saying on overall timing, but specifically for reading, each of us has a pace that we read at, that's the pace we read at and we comprehend. And trying to change that pace is a different, more difficult, longer term project. But because we're being timed, many of us, I don't say all of us, but many of us push ourselves to read faster than what we really comfortably comprehend at. And it's made worse by the fact that we're doing this on a screen. Everyone, our eyes and our minds just try to move faster and read faster when we look at a screen, and we comprehend less. So when we're reading on the GRE, we actually might even want to read in a way that feels slightly slow. We want to keep ourselves at a pace where we can read and understand and feel comfortable. Because the other thing that pushing ourselves to read too fast does is it elevates again our stress, and it makes us more tired. And one of the big issues in verbal in particular is fatigue, because those passages are dense and they're written in incomprehensible language, and they have, words that nobody uses, and they're playing a lot of games with us, and they're often kind of boring. There's all these things that demand a high level of attention in verbal. And if we're pushing ourselves to go too fast, we're kind of squandering some of that attention, and it makes fatigue worse. However, depending on what your reading pace is, and this is where reading becomes, I think we'll each have our own slightly different strategy for reading, but you do want to think about what are some other ways that you can keep within the time boundaries without pushing yourself to read at a pace that's too fast. And I promise that whatever your pace is, there's a strategy that works, because I have seen students, I've seen students who are very slow, and students who are very fast readers, and everyone in between. And there's unique kind of benefits and challenges to every reading style. And I've seen all different types of reading styles, people with all different types of reading styles find success. So it takes maybe a little patience and practice to find the right strategy, but you can do it. So how do you make time if you need, if you need to be reading a little bit slower? One, really know what all the question types are, what types of games they play, what types of patterns you see in right and wrong answers. I would put a lot of energy in the early days of my studying into analyzing reading comprehension question stems and answer choices, because those can help me make some quick eliminations, narrow things down faster, avoid traps. So, a lot of people benefit from taking more time on the passage read, but then making the questions more efficient, which often does happen when you take more time. Use the paper. Figure out, everyone again will use the paper differently, but everyone should be thinking about how to use the paper to support them in verbal. In quant, it's a little more obvious that we should do that. But in verbal, it's really helpful. And here's why. When you put things on the paper, you are not trying to hold them all in your working memory. And it's like, it's like freeing up space in a computer drive. And so what'll happen is the more that you can allocate out, outsource some things to your paper in verbal, the happier your brain will be. Now, just to show you, there is a danger that you take too many notes, right? Like this, you don't want to be sort of continuously note taking like you would in a college class, but you do want to do a little bit. And just to show you, right? Like my notes for a passage might be something like this, like paragraph 1, birds, how did birds get to Hawaii? And then there's 2 theories, ocean, air. And then paragraph 2 is about down, ocean, probably air. And that's it, maximum. I might even have something that's like much simpler, that's just 1 word for each paragraph. And then for each problem, and this I think is a universally good habit in verbal, I'll write down A, B, C, D, E. And as I go through, I'll either say, this is absolutely not right, might be, don't know the word, don't understand, might be absolutely not right. And then I can go back and reconsider. But doing this alone, if you aren't already, will help you save a lot of energy and be a lot less tired in verbal, and more accurate, saves from small errors too. So that's one thing. And again, this is something you want to practice, right? Try something out, see if it works, make some adjustments, try again. This kind of iterative practice with adjustment is the core pattern for improving in both quant and verbal. And then the other thing that's super important in reading comp is you do not need to understand 100% of the passage to get 100% of the questions right. I think you may, I've done a lot of passages over the years, and I've written them and I've explained them. And once I spent like 5 hours in a row explaining reading comp questions, which is great. I learned a lot from that. You can answer them. This is what I learned from doing that, actually, from doing 5 straight hours of GRE reading comp, is you probably need like 40 to 50% of a passage tops, sometimes less. So if you're a slower reader, sometimes what I'll have students do is they'll focus just on the first and last sentences of paragraphs. Maybe they move their eyes over, lightly read the middle. Maybe they truly skip. Everyone's a little different. Some people don't do well with skipping things. So that might be one thing, but really thinking about where do I have to pay attention off in the beginning and the end, and then where can I not pressure myself to feel like I have to understand everything. And that again comes with practice. Oh yeah, I'll talk about writing for sure. I'm just gonna make a note of that, and we'll do that at the end. I like it. So to improve your timing, here's what you should do. If you were just starting, don't worry about time. Don't try to be fast right away if you're just starting. First, be able to do problems accurately, comfortably, and confidently. Good process, good written work, error-free, feel very settled, right? Huge mistake I see is people pressuring themselves to be fast before they're comfortably accurate. And then it gets very messy, and that can sometimes make the whole process longer, right? So if you're willing to be patient at the start, I promise you, you'll be serving the overall efficiency. Like you'll be done sooner, right? If you can be patient at the start. Once you hit that point, then just start noticing, right? And this first stage might be 2 weeks, it might be 2 months, it might be 3 months. Now it depends kind of where you're starting, what work you need to do. Stage 2, just notice, right? Just see. When I'm accurate in reading, how long do I take to read the passage? How long do I do the questions? When I'm accurate in quant, how long do I take? Sometimes you'll notice, okay, I'm a little slow, but if I just do a little less, I skip a couple more questions, I can still hit the score that I want. Or you might notice, oh, I'm really slow on this type of question. Let me figure out if there's a different strategy or different approach that could help me to be faster, different written work. Or maybe some questions you decide they're always going to be in that very slow, do only have time, like for me, conversion problems, or super hard combinatorics, right? Like I tend to be slow and messy on those, so I'll save them till the end or just skip them. And then finally, short timed, see, I do make small errors. There's a typo. I make so many, but I can work with it. Short time set practice, just like what I demonstrated for you today. So mix of questions, 3 to 10, start with 3. When you get good with 3, go to 5, good with 5, go to 7, right? Build up step by step. One goal, right? So I'm going to go into each set saying, in this set, I'm going to practice breathing. In this set, I'm going to practice skipping something. In this set, I'm going to practice my written work. So I'm not trying to solve all my problems at once. I'm trying to focus on one thing in each set. And I have very concrete goals for each set. I reflect before I check my answers because what I'm trying to think about is like, what's my perception of my performance and then what is my sort of actual performance. So I want to compare those two things. I check my answers. I review each problem. I review questions I get right too, because that's often where my opportunity for speed is, right? I'm gonna better be able to make something I can already do faster than to make something I can't yet do fast. So I review questions I got right for efficiency and check that I did it in a way that isn't correct, not just lucky. And then I do wrong ones, and I'm looking for one takeaway, one like bigger lesson about that topic, question type, the test, or myself, because I'm not going to see that question again. So I'm going to learn something from it that I can take forward elsewhere. I write down at the end, what's one thing I want to keep doing, one habit that served me on this set, and then what's one thing that I want to adjust. And then either that day or in my next study session, I can repeat. So early in your studies, you'll probably do a lot of untimed work while you're getting comfortable with content, learning the question types, developing a reading strategy, acquiring vocabulary, all that good stuff. Then you'll move into a middle section, and again, can be a couple weeks, can be a couple months, depends on the person, where you're mixing timed and untimed practice. And then in this final stage, it's going to be a lot of just this timed set practice. So my 5 most important things, and then I want to return, and then I'll speak for a moment about timing and writing, and then I want to answer any other questions that I have time for in our last kind of 7 or 8 minutes. Don't try to do every problem. Do learn which ones you should do and should not do through time set practice and reflection. Do be flexible and kind with yourself. Maybe that sounds weird to say when we're talking about standardized tests, but I think that's actually, huge thing. And so many of the clients that I work with, right, is they're being really hard on themselves in their heads, and that's making things worse. And so, learning to acknowledge the moments where you don't feel good, but then to be kind of kind and gentle with them. I can't tell you how much that can really, really transform how you work with time. Begin each section with something that you can settle into comfortably that boosts confidence. Don't try to be fast until you've built your foundations. Be patient at the start of your overall study process. And then once you are ready with that good foundation to bring in timing, these kinds of short time sets are amazing. They give you test-like practice that you can do every day. And then, you can do practice tests every no more than once a week. Ideally, I think every other week or to every 3 weeks is a good practice test cadence. Cool. I will say something briefly about the essay now, and then any other questions. We have, I think, like 7 minutes. So feel free to put any other questions in the chat, and we'll also go back through and check to see what I have missed. In the essay, I think it depends a little bit like how fast you write, right? But I'd say, around 5 minutes brainstorming, around 20 minutes writing, and then around 3 minutes to read over. And then I think it's nice to save like 2 minutes to settle. Because the essay for many of us, unless you're applying to a PhD in the humanities, but if you're applying to a business school or something in the social sciences or hard sciences, or, for many, many, law school, maybe also the essay is more important. But for many, many programs, the essay is not as important. So I think if you can, give yourself a couple minutes to rest at the end, to just recharge before you go into the score sections. Some people need a little more time brainstorming, but are faster writers. Practice at least one and see. Yes, Elliot, I love that. I would also practice some physical cues to reset your nerves in between sections. So, I would close my eyes, roll my shoulders, deep breaths, right? That's very helpful. The breathing especially is very helpful for fatigue. I've noticed a big change from when I didn't breathe, when I didn't breathe intentionally to when I did, how much energy I had. Vinay, the GRE is always offered continuously, and it's you can find more information on the ETS website, which I just put in there. Yes. Varun, I would do a GRE practice test right away for you and see where you're at in relation to your goal score. And then I would, then you may wait like another, you may wait a month to do your second one while you get kind of acquainted with the GRE. But for you switching from GMAT, do an ASAP to see what's going to transfer for GMAT from GMAT, and then where do you need to build some new skills. My guess is the comparison questions and the vocab will be the two things you'll want to start with. But I think especially because you're looking at July, do a mock right away. Akshay, great plan, Akshay. And about, in terms of individual question timing, I would say one vocab questions around 1 minute. That's a great question, and I probably should have done that sooner, so I appreciate you asking that. Reading comp, 2 minutes per question, but that is done, I do it on a passage basis. So, right, like a passage with 3 questions would be 6 minutes. Quant is the sort of official line is that quantitative comparison should be done in 1 minute and 30 seconds, and all other quant should be done in 2 minutes. I personally am slow in quantitative comparison, but I'm faster in problem solving. So I actually probably take more like 2 minutes per question for QC and a little bit less for the other question types. So just keep in mind, right? Like these are averages, easy questions, a little less, hard, a little more, and notice your own patterns and adjust. Love. Rebecca, I think most people do somewhere between 3 and 6, unless you have a really long cycle, right? But I'd say, in a like 3 to 8 month process, I usually see people take like 3 to 8 practice tests. Vinay, I think so. I think Erica can probably give you more info about that. Let's see. Best way to study vocab. Best way to study vocab is the way that you do what you will do. Best vocab system is the system you will use every day. Because the most important thing is consistency over time. And then I cannot be more emphatic about this. No more than 50 new words in 1 week. Doesn't stick, burns you out, creates false fluency, causes more problems. So that's sort of some core vocab stuff. If you want to really get into like the tried and true, the 19th century German learning science, something called a Leitner box. When I've had students who are going to be really aggressive about vocab and really committed to it, that's like the gold standard for memorization. You can just Google, you can find instructions for it on Google. Also, apps are great too. Anki is great. Lots of people like Magoosh. A lot of students use both of those and like them. So the system that you are going to use every day is the best. Cool. To get to that time. Mary, it's so different from person to person. I think if you're new, for everyone who's new, right, just take a practice test now. It's not going to go great, right? That's fine. You may realize that you don't do a single quant question because it's been, a million years since you did math, and that's also totally fine. But just get that experience and find out where you're starting. And that way, when you've done some work, you can also track your improvement. So that's my other little tip for folks who are new is do a practice test right away. Cool. We are almost at the end of our time and maybe have time for one more question. If you want to chat more with me, come schedule an intro call. We'll chat. If you want to just need help with the overall process, come chat with someone at Leland. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for being, vocabs takes time. Maybe do 500 words. 500 words is also a good goal. Quickly, GRE scoring. Can I explain? Scaled score between 130 and 170 in both sections. GRE people tend to think of the two sections separately a little bit more than they do on GMAT. And then the essay score is separate 2 to 6. 0 to 6 comes a few days later. And it's section adaptive. So the way you can think of it is the first quant section sets a range for your quant score. The second quant section pinpoints your score within that range. Same with verbal. That is a very brief intro to how the test is scored. There's a lot more information available easily online. Super happy to hear it. You're so welcome, Daniel. Thank you, Rhiannon. I'm glad it's been helpful. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your lovely questions and comments. So appreciate you all. And good luck. I hope you all get to be done with this and get to your goal score as soon as possible and can move on to other things. Have a lovely day. Nice to see you here.